So we talked about this a lot, actually. Truth is real. There's objective truth. Some things are true. There's truth when it comes to morality and how we should act and the things that we should do and the choices that we make, right? But sometimes do we make choices and initially maybe we think to ourselves, this doesn't really feel right. But then we kind of come up with several reasons why it's okay for us to do it. Have you ever done that before? Yeah, I have. So it happens, right? And that's us not being honest with ourselves. If we can't be honest with ourselves, right, it becomes even easier to be dishonest with other people, because I lie to myself sometimes, why not lie to other people sometimes, right? But what God does in prayer is He changes us over time. How many of you know about St. Paul? Does everybody know who St. Paul is? Okay.
He used to be Saul.
Yeah, he did,
Yeah.
Sam. And what did Saul do before he was St. Paul?
Killed Christians or
He-
Jews?
Killed Christians. That's what he did. You're right. He was a murderer, right? And he hunted them down, and he arrested them, and he killed them. A lot of times, when people think about St. Paul, they think about his conversion as being like this momentary thing. It happened like that, and his whole life was changed. And in a certain sense, in that moment, his whole life was changed. He encountered Christ in this mystical vision. Christ revealed all of these things to him. But if you read St. Paul, and you read all of his letters, there was a journey of conversion that continued to happen with Paul. It wasn't over the moment that he encountered Christ on the road. He continued to pray and to do the things he knew he ought to do and to receive the Eucharist. And his conversion continued to grow even as he was doing those things. So what happens with prayer? Prayer purifies our heart. It makes us more charitable. It helps us to love God more. That's the really beautiful thing about prayer. And sometimes it doesn't always happen suddenly, just like that. Sometimes it might. I mean, you might have some really profound experience in prayer, and it might move you, right? But even if it does, sometimes as time goes by, and you don't have that experience in prayer again for a while, you have to still be faithful to prayer, even though God doesn't continue to give you good feelings in prayer all the time, right? Those kind of inspirations. Sometimes God does give them, right? He clearly gave them to St. Paul. And sometimes He'll give them to us too, right? But they don't always look like that. How many of you have had Jesus appear to you on the road and reveal the whole entire faith to you?
No.
Yeah, no, me either. So, I hope, but never happened. Right? But there might be other smaller things that happen to you. And you might have little experiences in prayer. The thing is to remember that what a gift those are, because you're actually really encountering God when you have them. And to hold on to them for a rainy day. When time goes by, and you haven't had one for a while, but you continue to pray all the time, and you still haven't had one, but you keep praying, because it's still the conversation with God, even if you're not getting a feeling or a consolation from God, right? And so it's important. And that fidelity, as you continue to persevere, even though it's hard, is what purifies us, right? And what changes us. Remember at the beginning of the class I said that we don't change God's will, God changes ours. That's what prayer does. Over time, it changes us so that we start to look at ourselves differently. And we start to see ourselves more clearly. Because that's what Christ is, right? He's the light shining in the darkness, right? And when we have that little darkness, that little corner where we've got this thing we like to do that ain't in accord with God's will, and we keep telling ourselves it's okay, and we've made up all these excuses, when we start to pray, Christ will shine that light on that place, and He'll say it's not okay, right? And then He'll help you through grace and continued prayer and a renewed desire to be honest about it with yourself, to overcome that thing. Whether it's through finding a spiritual director or a mentor, someone to help you walk with you and help you get through that. Whether it's to talk to a priest or your parents, or depending on whatever your problem is, whatever the thing is that you struggle with, whether it's more than that, going to see a doctor, going to get some help, professional help, whatever that thing is. So that's the thing about prayer. it makes a difference. It's about conversion, right? So we talked about at the beginning about how ordering our will to God. And that's the thing that prayer is trying to do, is help us to order our will to God. And what does that mean? Again, charity. To be love more like God, more like Christ loved us on the cross. Does that make sense? And that's what prayer does. That's the purpose of prayer over time, is to convert our hearts, to purify them and to convert them.